Welcome to the podcast for real life heroines. I'm your host, Susanna Liller. In each episode, I talk with women who dare to be themselves, real heroines who take risks, both big and small. They try new things, challenge themselves, and take leaps into the unknown. Together, we'll hear stories of women stepping into courage, finding and using their voice, and realizing the gifts they were born to give. Let's begin. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me for yet another podcast about a real life heroine. And I have one, and her name is Alyson Shelton. Alyson, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to have an excuse to talk to you some more.
Yeah, wonderful. Ditto,
Yeah.
ditto. And I'm wondering because you have this very popular, wonderful podcast yourself. Well, would you call it a podcast if it's on Instagram Live? Yes.
Yeah, sure, you can call it whatever you like. I'm not I'm
But
not too concerned.
but you're always kind of in this chair. And
Mm.
is it weird to be in that chair and have me asking you?
No, I think it's very relaxing.
Oh, good, good. Then
Yeah.
I'll try to ask very relaxing questions.
Nice to not be in charge. I
Good.
mean,
I know.
I don't know if you feel that way sometimes, but it's
I
like I like to just be a passenger. It's
I
nice.
do. I do. And
Yeah.
we have to be responsible when we're in this chair. So
Hmm.
I need to say a few words about you, which you were kind enough to give me. And of course, your website has so much also. And we'll be sure to put additional things in the show notes so people know how to get to you in all the different ways that you appear in the world. But you are an award-winning screenwriter, an essayist, and people can find your writing, which is widely published at outlets including the New York Times and Ms., and you are anthologized in collections including No Contact Writers on Estrangement and The Loss of a Lifetime Grieving Siblings share stories of love, loss, and hope, which you also co-edited. And you're best known, and this is really why we're here together today, for your Instagram Live series inspired by George Ella Lyon's poem, Where I'm From, where you have hosted over 250 writers. And you make the point that not everybody calls himself a writer,
Yes.
but you turn them into writers and poets because of what you do. So thank you, Alyson, for being with me today.
Thank you for asking me.
And I just want to do a shout out to Ellen Webster
Yes.
because it was
Hmm.
Ellen who connected us.
Hmm.
And for those of you who don't know, Ellen Webster is the famous lady who got to be on the Today Show and everything because she wrote 10,000 thank you
Yeah.
notes. Yeah.
Yes. I'm guessing you have received one. Have you
Yeah.
received
Oh my
one?
God.
Yes. Yes, same. Such a treat.
Right. It really, and
Mhm.
we're talking handwritten thank you.
Yes, beautiful.
And
Hmm.
sometimes she writes three a day. And yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you and I were talking as we came on to Zoom. Um, you collect stories, I collect stories. You collect them using a particular writer's prompt from George Ella Lyon, which I want to talk about her a bit. And I do not so much using a prompt, but in my head, I carry the framework of the heroine's journey,
Hmm.
which has certain steps about what a woman does to kind of leave her comfort zone and go on an adventure. And
Hmm.
I want to talk to you about that, but I'm so intrigued by the picture behind you,
Oh,
a
which one?
woman who looks like a heroine. The
She is
one,
a heroine.
yes. And can you just say a bit about her? Because she's
Uh,
asking me to mention.
oh, lovely. She's May, and she's a creation from my brain, a comic book I wrote and created called Reburn. And she's the protagonist. She's the heroine, and she has been through a lot. And she is on a journey. And Elise McCall is the artist who drew
Yeah.
May and created this, and she is an incredible artist who
Yeah.
I adore and call a friend. And then the picture above is the woman who colors the comic. Her name is Hilary Jenkins. She's also a painter, and that's one of her paintings. So
Lovely.
I I love artists and creative people. I
Yeah.
feel so grateful to have many in my life.
Yeah. Well, and you have encouraged them to come to you. So let's talk about how you do that. And I think probably, well, I know something of the story, but I'm going to ask you to tell it. But the beginnings of it, I believe you were in a workshop
Hmm.
with George Ella Lyon, who is a
Nope, nope. With
okay,
Janine Let,
all
who's
right.
a writer and a
You
writing
go.
coach.
You
Yeah,
go. You
no.
know the story.
And she does a very I think she'll have a book, but she has a very popular Substack called Writing in the Dark. And she introduced me to the prompt and the poem Where I'm From, which is by George Ella Lyon. And lots of people know it, and I was very late to the party, but it doesn't matter when you arrive. And
Right.
I it was during the pandemic, and I participated in this workshop, and I didn't really get to the poem because I was talking to the woman who was in the breakout room with me. And then we came back to the, big room, and people started sharing their poems, and I was struck by what people were able to do in like 10 minutes. And I felt so much closer to these people that I didn't really know after this sharing. And then I wrote my poem later on my own, and I thought like, well, I wonder if anyone would want to join me on Instagram Live and share their poem. That would be so cool because I have always been really interested in where people are from, and I have also believed that we all have a unique story. It's something that just as things similar to you, it's something that gives me hope when there's not a lot sometimes. So I reached out to people and just said, "Oh, hey, I'm gonna try this thing if anyone wants to join me." And immediately Mesa, who's number one, was like, "I would love to do this." And that was the response. And I also reached out to a lot of people, right? Like when you do something, lots of times you need to make yourself vulnerable, especially if you're going to ask others to be vulnerable. So I did that for a while, and then I did reach out to Georgella. I think after, I don't remember, a few months, maybe something, just to make sure it was okay with her, because I would have felt kind of icky if she didn't know about it or I hadn't tried to let her know about it. And she was very excited about. She was lovely. She is lovely, and we have become friends,
Yeah.
which is like a really special. And it wasn't something I expected when I began.
Right. So you have your interview, not interview, but your conversation with her on your website.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I watched it, and I think she was probably thrilled that you are doing what you're doing. And
Hmm.
just what she writes on her website, how she loves to make lists of things that she loves. And so that definitely what comes out with the prompts. Now, the prompts were something that came from Fred Furst, right?
Yes. Hmm.
And so
Yes.
he is a writer and he has
Yes.
a Substack.
He
And I
does.
went and looked at his Substack. And interestingly enough, about a year ago, and you probably saw this, he wrote in there that it was time to offer up the prompts again. And he says something, I wrote it down so I could read it. He said, "It is time," this is a year ago, "it is time because none of us are from a twisted place like our country in these days has become. It is time to revisit and reclaim and draw strength and courage from the true and unique source of each of us in family, tradition, place, faith, and commitment to the greater good." And what a great mission, and you have taken that and expanded it greatly. And we'll make sure that we get people to his Substack so he can, they can see that too. But this is partly what you're doing, right? You're
I think
encouraging.
so.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I think that the more we're reclaim, for most of us, it's reclamation, our own voices, I think the better off we are. But then you that ripples out, right? And for me, Fred, he's also a wonderful person. He joined me for a poem, and he just made this prompt because he was moved by George Ella's poem and shared it on his blog, and it ripples outward. And I think many of us feel powerless. right? As
Right,
it's a really hard time as we
right.
watch people who we don't admire gain wealth and power, and but we can do little things and they do matter.
Yeah.
And that's something I have to believe
Yes. And
for my own sanity.
it's such a connecting thing to each other, but it's
Mhm.
also a connecting thing, as he says, back into yourself.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, so I was approached by Ellen Webster, who said, Susanna, you have to do this, you have to know about it. And I immediately said, I want to do it. And I contacted you and you said,
Yeah.
sure. And so you sent me the prompts from Fred Furst. And I have to say, kind of like you, I didn't really take it all in when I did it. It was just I
Hmm.
signed up to do it. I looked at everything. I looked at the prompts and I jumped in. And I was amazed. It's like those prompts catapult you back into your history. And I don't know if you remember, because you remember you have so many of these coming your way, but that one of the first prompts is to remember an item from your past. I think
Hmm.
that's how it said. And I
Hmm.
immediately kind of let myself be drawn in. I didn't want to think.
Hmm.
And I immediately thought of a can of Hungarian paprika.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's like, in Harry Potter, that boot that takes them everywhere they can travel with it. I traveled with a can of paprika to a wedding that I went to when I was 12 years old in Hungary, to the kitchen where my grandmother's making chicken paprikash. It's such a gift to go back there. So, um, yeah, it's a wonderful thing. And I'm going to quote you because you say more than anything, they spoke, and this is the stories you hear through the people, through their poems, to that part of me that believes that each of us has a unique and powerful story to tell. It's been proven time and time again. If I take the time to listen and the other takes the time and trusts me enough to share as well, we're both better for it. What better gift to give the world right now, Alyson?
Oh, you're gonna make me cry.
Really, really, yeah, I'm not exaggerating. Yeah,
I feel, and listening to you and just you describing it, it's just a lot of it is love. Like Fred, Georgella, myself, the people who join me, it's very caring and loving. The, and I'm grateful for all of these people in my life because I think we can get distracted and think that we're alone in this. And we're not. There's so many more of us.
right, right.
And and if I and so many people have come to me later and said, "Oh, this helped me write this, or this helped me say this, or this," and I if I could make a profession of encouraging people to do the thing they've always wanted to do, I would love to make a profession of that because it's so wonderful.
Yeah, but aren't you doing that?
I hope so. I
Yeah,
really do hope so. Yeah.
yeah. I hope
Hmm.
so too, because
Yeah.
we do need it and it is important. And I think partially what happens in the work that I do with the heroine's journey,
Hmm.
having women understand that they're on one. We have a tendency to think that it's more like the hero's journey has to be some big something, but no, it could be taking a chance and asking people to write poems from prompts, like what you have done. And yeah, so encouraging them to remember and know that they're the main protagonist in a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do want to hear it. So
Yeah.
let me quiz you about that. Maybe this is the only part that's going to be hard. I don't think so.
Oh no, a quiz.
If you think about the heroine's journey, and the way I talk about it is there's a woman, child, a young woman, whatever, who is kind of kicking around her village and or community and doesn't think of herself as special. And if you would ask her who do you look up to, she'd point to everyone else. She really wouldn't necessarily think of herself as a main character in her story.
Mhm.
But what happens is she gets a call. A call comes to her, and it can be an internal call, like I have to do something different, or somebody sends her a poem and she gets inspired, or she talks to somebody. If she answers that call, it takes her on an adventure. She goes across an invisible threshold into a whole different world and she's into the unknown and has experiences that challenge her, but she grows from it. And also, because she's doing it, she's helping other people. So, where were you when you got the call? Well, I guess you've already told us you were in that particular workshop. Tell me, before that, we call it ordinary life. What was Alyson's ordinary life before that workshop?
Well, it was the pandemic, right? So I was very much at home and finding community on Zoom and I was with my kids and my husband and we were honestly we were doing considering what we were going through pretty well.
Yeah.
We get along, we have a home, we were financially okay and I felt very grateful for that. And I think also um, I was finding, I was reconnecting with my more sort of radical voice. I think I had sort of been a little quieter because I had kids and I didn't want to get in the way of them making friends or having community by being like this loud mom, you know, because I had some issues as a child with people thinking my mom was kooky and it got in the way sometimes of my ability to make friends. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to be too much. And so I think being home in the pandemic and not having to go to drop off and pick up was and see people and sort of have to I wasn't performing, but I was just making sure I wasn't too much. And I was able to start publishing work that was meaningful to me and speaking up more about what was important to me and I will say like friendships changed, relationships did change, but for the most part that was okay. Some of it was painful, so I do think it was sort of related to that feeling of like I'm my own person who gets to speak what's true for me, and my kids are old enough that I'm not going to get in their way of having a social life,
Right.
so I can speak up more about what is important to me.
So you were stepping more in the foreground instead of staying in the background.
Yeah, I think I was also just like, it's important for me to speak up as a white woman of a certain age who I think there are a lot of people who look like me who are very problematic. And I think it felt important to me to say what mattered, you know, as George Floyd was being murdered and these things were happening. Like, um, I just didn't want anybody to not be sure of what I believed.
So then you go to this workshop
Hmm.
and you're called to do
Hmm.
something as a result. And oftentimes, when that happens on a journey, a heroine's journey, you're kind of trying something new into the unknown. The threshold guardians appear, and the threshold guardians are in your head, but sometimes your neighbors, and they're saying, What? What are you going to do, Alyson? Nobody's going to want to do that. How can you make a poem up from this, or whatever was in your head? Was it hard for you? Did you get threshold guardians yapping at you?
Not too much. It was funny because the idea came to me and when I was meditating, which is kind of woo, but it's true. Just kind of like popped into my consciousness and
That has happened to
yeah,
me more than once.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah.
think because you kind of cleared out the like noise, right? And so things can come to you. And then it really helped. And I will say this with a journey of any kind, my community is so helpful. And I think any sort of noise I might have had about it, I was like, what's the harm in putting it out there to these people? And if none of them respond, then but people were just so lovely and supportive and I think because it was a little after I started to put myself out there. I mean, so I think I had gotten better at cultivating people and friendships who were supportive and were interested in meeting me where I was at. So those people stepped up for me, where I think had I done it a couple years earlier when I was in a different place, I had more friends who might have said like, "What? That's why
Interesting.
would you do so?" So I do think like it is all connected. Like it is a journey, right?
Yeah.
You don't just like pop up somewhere and do something. You 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 get there
You
step by
build,
step.
you build, and sometimes I look back and I think, Jesus, like I was guided on this path, and
Yeah.
maybe that's kind of woo-woo, but I think I think that so then you're out there and you're collecting stories and you're talking to
hmm
people and learning a lot because the journey is all
hmm
about us evolving. Um, so what have you learned? What have, listening to all these stories, and maybe this is an impossible question because there's so much that you've heard, but any kind of takeaway?
Sure. I have some. One that I no matter what. So I will have 250 in next week, and every single poem there's something that reminds me of my life
Mhm.
that brings back something I might not have thought of. And it reminds me of how interconnected we all are, which is something that I believe, but to see it in action or to be a part of it in action is very powerful to me. I also think I've learned the power of an invitation. People are just really longing to be invited into
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
And
yeah.
um, yes, there's vulnerability in inviting people, and people have said no, or for multitude of reasons, but way more people have said yes. And um, just just invite people, welcome them in. You might be surprised. And I've also learned some, I just don't like gatekeeping. I've never really liked it. I just don't. I'm so grateful to have a space where everyone's welcome. Because when you're creating something, you don't really know what it is,
Right.
right? I mean, you kind of have a basic idea, but things happened over time where it was like people would ask me, "Oh, I don't know if I'm right for this," and I was just so grateful that from the beginning it was like, "Of course you're right for it. Everyone's right for it." Um, and sometimes people would send me poems and ask if I had edits or if this worked and also of course I'm not giving you edits. That's not what I'm here for. I'm just here to receive. So I'm just kind of grateful that when I'm given these options, right? I could have made myself an arbiter or gatekeeper, and it's just I'm not interested in it. And I think it comes from a place, these systems that are really problematic in our society. It's related to that. So I think I'm grateful to have created a space that's about freedom and affirmation.
And to have this particular key that gets you to answer these questions that are easy because they're about your life.
hmm
And that helps you kind of get in a space where you can then create a poem. And it doesn't have to be like you're a poet and, you know, but it
Yeah,
comes together like
yeah.
a poem. Yeah.
hmm
It's so
hmm
amazing. It's amazing what this all, and I know it's you and George Ella and Fred have helped to make this happen, but you are kind of, I see you, you're at the head carrying the torch and lighting people up like me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so George Ella Lyon, do you want to tell us anything about her? I know we're almost at our time, but I wanted to just give you a chance to say what you think of this woman.
Well, I think very highly of her. I, they say don't meet your heroes, but she is a hero of mine, and I'm so grateful to have met her and call her my friend. And I think she's such a picture of generosity, and it makes so much sense that this happened to her poem because she's never held it tightly.
Yeah.
She's never she shared it with everyone, and I just it's very inspiring. She's written like 50 something books, you know? I mean, she's an incredibly prolific writer. And that this is a poem of all the things. Um, but she doesn't have any, she's not like, you know how sometimes people are troubled because they want people to understand all of the facets of them, not just this one. She doesn't appear troubled. She's grateful for what the poem has done in the world. And I also want to say she has said, I think in a conversation publicly, but certainly privately, that Joe Carson inspired her to write Where I'm From. And
Hmm.
she said, in that time you didn't say, uh, you know, uh, like in the vein of or inspired by her, you just wrote the poem. And she would now say that Joe did. And she, we were talking, probably Joe would say someone inspired her.
Right.
And I just think that sort of interconnectedness again, and how we are all inspiring each other. And she's so like, I want people to know, Joe Carson. And so I want to acknowledge that
Right.
because it's important to her because she doesn't want people to think that she thinks she like started it all. And that speaks to her spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned that as you were thinking about doing this, that well, you loved those stories that you were hearing from the people in the
Mhm,
workshop and everything,
mhm,
but then you said, and I thought it might be fun. And I'm
mhm.
wondering if it's fun.
Yes, it is. It's something I look forward to every week. I get so much joy out of getting childhood photos. It really is the most fun. And that was not how I started. Michelle Yang, I don't remember what number poem she was, but she sent me a childhood photo of herself and said, "This is who I'm writing about." And so it seemed important to send this picture to you. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. It is important. And
Perfect.
I love it. It is really, it feels like a privilege. People will thank me and I sincerely thank them because it doesn't exist without everybody else. And I think that's true of life and creation and community. Like we're all in this together.
Right. And what you're doing really as well is just showing us again how we're connected, how we share so much. Those
Mhm.
childhood pictures. I gave one of myself with my grandmother who I was named
Mhm.
after, and it ended up that I talked the most about her in my poem, So, which if you really just let yourself go into it and answer and go where the words lead you, you don't know where they're going to lead you. But it's so wonderful that I got to her. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I think their lineage, the matriarchy, the matrilineal, like I feel my ancestors more, I think, because of this project. And that's also something I'm grateful for because I think our ancestors are proud of us.
I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I'm
And
grateful.
yeah, yeah. I'm wondering if anything surprised you,
Hmm.
has surprised you.
I think it has surprised me a little, like sometimes writers that admire and are widely published still are insecure. I think that surprised me at first that I don't know, it shouldn't because everybody's human, but I think this idea that you get to a certain place and then you're just confidence, it's just not real.
No, it isn't. Not with any of us, but yeah,
No,
with writers,
no,
you would think, huh, interesting.
no, but there's still, oh, what do you think? It doesn't, who asks for feedback or thoughts? It has nothing to do with their quote unquote professional success. It's just who they are and what they think. And I think that was because who am I? That's always my response. Like, who am I to say if it's good or bad? I'm just some person. And I think that has also helped me when I put my own writing out into who are they?
Yeah.
They're just like you have to know that it's the thing you want to say in you. And I think that without being really aware of what I was doing, I think that's what I'm saying to people is, do you think this poem is ready? Do you think this poem is finished? You are the arbiter, not me.
Mm, mm, mm.
And I think that ownership of our own voices and that is so, so important. And I think in some ways very scary because we want someone to tell us you're done, you did a good job.
Right.
Um, but I think we are all in charge of this great project of expressing ourselves.
Wow. And the way that you have provided us to get there takes us back into the very core of who we are with those memories and those associations, that it gives strength to, yes, this is my voice and I should trust it. Because
Mhm.
I'm the one that went to Hungary with my grandmother and we
Right,
had the
right.
wedding and yeah,
Hmm.
oh my gosh.
Hmm.
Well, I have to let you go, Alyson. I hate that, but one more question.
Okay.
All of this we've talked about, people listening, what do you really want them to leave with and not to forget?
That your story is worth telling.
Yeah, yeah,
Even if you think you're the most ordinary, unremarkable person, everyone is extraordinary. And it's funny, Susanna, before we started, I went back to our Instagram live just to, like, okay. And I was talking about Joanne Beard's book, The Boys of Our Youth, which I read and was Voice of My Youth. Incredible book. And it is such a book about just a life. Um, and how she writes it and tells it to us is what makes it extraordinary. And we all are. And there are so many forces trying to tell us that we're not. And I just want to say F them.
yeah,
That's my message.
yeah. Good, good. That's so true. And that's when you talk about the heroine, yes, you are a heroine. You have
Yeah,
left your comfort zone. You have done
yeah,
things that you might have been afraid of and the threshold guardians, yes,
yeah,
but you did it. You did it anyway. That's,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Well, Alyson, this is great. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you
thank you.
so much for doing what you're doing. And I'm going to send people to you, and
Please
hopefully
do.
this will inspire more people to look at where
Yeah,
they're from. Yeah.
I'm here. I look forward to it. And thank you so much for having me and doing such an incredible job of the journey of this project. It's really meaningful to me. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so pleased. And
Yeah.
I love hearing people's stories too. So I think we're sort of in the same something,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the same.
Kindred spirits.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Everybody
Okay.
listening, thank you so much for being a part of our talk today. And we look forward to talking to you and hearing from you about this. And join me next month.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the podcast for real life heroines. Your time and presence mean the world to us. If you're hungry for more inspiration and ready to craft your own heroine story, connect with Susanna outside of the show. Visit susannalillard.com to discover her courses and programs designed to empower you on your journey. Until next time, may your days be filled with the courage and strength of a true heroine. Stay inspired.